So I first want to start off this video by saying congrats to Amanda Nunes on the big win. Congrats to Amanda Nunes on her illustrious career and on her retirement. And I think it's a hands down, no argument discussion when it comes to her being the greatest of all time in women's MMA, not just in UFC, but in women's MMA. And so it then leads to the question of, is Amanda the GOAT of women and men? And she did come out with a statement saying that she's the GOAT no matter what, no matter when it comes to women or men, and when it comes to being the GOAT. Now, before I start this discussion, I have to make things clear. And we have to be real with this, people. We have to be real that when it comes to women being in combat sports, that there is a bit of discrepancy. I don't think women necessarily get the same shake that men do when it comes to combat sports. And maybe the combat pool isn't as deep when it comes to women's MMA compared to men's MMA. And that would be a fair discussion, and that would be a fair statement, I think. But they don't get the same shake. Now, I don't think that takes away anything from what Amanda Nunes has accomplished, because I think Amanda beat the who's when it came to women. I think Amanda Nunes not only beat these women, she dominated these women. She dominated for, I'd say, the majority of her wins. And so I have up right now 3 people and their record. And these 3 would be Amanda Nunes, George St. Pierre, and John Jones. Now, there are other people that a lot of critics, a lot of people, a lot of analysts might add. So we're talking Demetrius Johnson, we're talking Khabib, we're talking, I think those are the other people who are commonly mentioned, and Anderson Silva, which is somebody that I've mentioned before. But when I really sit down and think about it, I think that these 3 people, Amanda Nunes, John Jones, and George St. Pierre, I think are at the top of the list when it comes to being the GOAT. And you can add in, I really do think that you could add in Anderson Silva, just based off of the way he dominated his opponents, the way he defended the titles. He made it seem so effortless. And I think when it comes to a champion, I think he's probably at the top of the list when it comes to making the wins just look easy. What he did to Rich Franklin, what he did to Forrest Griffin, what he did to Stephan Bonner, what he did to Vitor Belfort, and amongst a bunch of other men that he beat in a very dominant fashion, I think that could be left up to discussion if you look at it from a dominance standpoint. But I think there is one thing that I think Anderson Silva is missing, and I think that it was his ability to go out on top, to retire on top. And I think that is also a factor when it comes to being a GOAT. Now, do I think it's the biggest factor? Probably not. But it does it takes him down some notches. And so I think these 3 people are the top. Now, let's get into it. Let's get into George St. Pierre first, okay? Now, I'm going to start from right around where George St. Pierre started to be champion, started to get into that race of championship contention. So, George St. Pierre, he lost to Matt Hughes back in 2004. He then went to beat Dave Strasser. He then went to beat Jason Miller. He beat Frank Trigg. He beat Sean Shirk. He beat BJ Penn, which is a very notable win, because I think BJ Penn was a massive name at that point. We're talking 2006. So this is when BJ Penn and Georges St. Pierre were some of the biggest names in the UFC at this point. We're talking after his win against BJ Penn, he beat Matt Hughes. Then he had a very, very crazy loss. And I think these type of losses come, to most champions, but it's the ability to bounce back from these kinds of wins, right? And so he lost to Matt Serra. Then he beat Josh Koscheck. He beat Matt Hughes. Then he beat Matt Serra again. I shouldn't say again. He fought Matt Serra and then beat Matt Serra. Then he beat John Finch. He beat BJ Penn again. Thiago Alves. He beat Dan Hardy. Josh Koscheck again. Jake Shields. Carlos Condit. Nick Diaz. Johnny Hendricks. Then he had that retirement, and then he came back in 2017, 4 years later. He beat Johnny Hendricks in 2013, came back 4 years later, which it's actually insane that that fight with Michael Bisping happened in 2017. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, people. I thought it was somewhere around 2019, but I think that is a very, very impressive, that's a very impressive record. He did have a lot of, double wins. He beat a couple of people, as he fought them twice. But that's a very, very strong record, and he dominated a lot of those fighters in a very, very steady fashion. And so I can understand the argument between Georges St. Pierre. And now we're going to go to Jon Jones. So Jon Jones beat, again, we'll go from right around where he became champion. So he beat Mauricio Hua. He beat Quentin Rampage Jackson. He beat Lyoto Machida. He beat Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Alexander Gustafsson, Glover Teixeira, Daniel Cormier, Ovince St. Preux. Then he had a no contest against Daniel Cormier there was a lot of weird things going on when it came to PEDs at that point. I think, and I'm almost certain that ended up coming back, that he had what was it? Less than a picogram. And that could easily lead to being tainted, as far as whatever supplement he was taking at that time was tainted. My argument against that, though, is that I believe that if you are an elite athlete, that you should be able to know where to go when it comes to getting the cleanest of supplements. And so, do these kinds of things happen even if he was going that route of trying to find the cleanest, not performance enhancing drugs, but supplements? It could happen, but that is something that was kind of a hiccup when it came to Jon Jones's ability to be called the greatest of all time. But after that, he came back, and then he beat Alexander Gustafsson again. He beat Anthony Smith. He beat Thiago Santos, Dominic Reyes. Then he took some time off for personal reasons. Hey, I'm not gonna say or go into detail about why that was, but Jon Jones has had his fair shake when it comes to not being able to be consistent as a human being. Okay, we'll put it that way. But then he came back and he beat Cyril. And so his record is is very, very dominant as well. The majority of his wins are extremely dominant up until what I would say Dominic Reyes. It wasn't as dominant as people were looking for it to be. Thiago Santos, it wasn't quite as dominant as people were looking for it to be, alongside Anthony Smith. But outside of that, I mean, Ovid St. Preux, you could make that argument that it should have been more of a dominant win. But outside of that, you know, what he did to Glover Teixeira, boy, what he did to Alexander Gustafsson, especially in the second fight. Their first fight was extremely competitive, but that was one of the greatest fights of all time, in my opinion. And so that fight in itself, I think, doesn't put a stain on his ability to be the greatest of all time. And so when we look at his streak of wins and who he beat and how he beat them, I think Jon Jones is easily in the GOAT discussion. Now, lastly, we're going to go to Amanda Nunes. And again, we're going to start from right around the time that Amanda Nunes was becoming champion. And we're going to start a fight before for Amanda, because she beat a very notable mention, and that's Valentina Shevchenko. I think that is a championship fight in itself, people. A lot of people were considering Valentina Shevchenko being the GOAT when it came to women's MMA, and that was a very strong argument, a hard argument for me to be able to go against when it came to Amanda Nunes and Valentina. But Amanda Nunes did beat her, and that's something that I can't. That's something that can't be discussed anymore after she beat her. Then she beat Miesha Tate. Very dominant fashion. She beat Ronda Rousey in a dominant fashion. She beat Valentina Shevchenko again. And then she beat Raquel Pennington. She beat Cyborg. She beat Holly Holm, Jermaine Durandame, Felicia Spencer. She beat Megan Anderson. She lost to Juliana Pena, but then she came back and crushed Juliana Pena. And then she beat Irene Aldana and then retired. Now, maybe she didn't have quite as many title defenses, did she? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Did I count that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So she got 11 out of 12 wins as being a champion. That's pretty good. And she dominated. She dominated all of them. Finished most of them. And so that's something that you really have to look at. Her consistency as a champion and how she beat them. She was putting women on milk cartons. She was putting them on t-shirts. What she did to Cyborg should be illegal. What she did to Ronda Rousey should be illegal. What she did to Megan Anderson should be illegal. Okay? She beat Holly Holm. She got all the Infinity Stones when it came to women. All the women that were seen as the elite of the elite, she made them not look elite. She made them look like there was no chance. It started to become to a point where it's like, who is she going to fight? Who is even left? Like, it got to a point to where it's like, Amanda Nunes didn't necessarily retire because she necessarily wanted to. If there were 2, 3 other women that you could say, but you didn't beat them, then I think that there would be a chance that she could have stayed. I think that she would have stayed. But there's nobody else. She literally cleared out 2 divisions and left them wastelands. And so I think that's also something to really look at. And like I said, I know that these divisions and the women's divisions aren't as deep as the men. And so it's easier to clean out these divisions. But at the same time, she cleaned out who she needed to clean out. She left no stone unturned. And I think that's a big, big statement. And I think that that is something that you could say as an argument for her being the GOAT of MMA, men or women. And so it's hard for me to say. I can't put Amanda Nunes out of that race. I think it's a discussion that needs to happen. And like I said, I don't think women will get the same shake that a guy does. I mean, and their division, the women's division, isn't as mature yet as the men's division, in my opinion. Will it be? Yes. But she cleared out 2 divisions. 2. And that's something that I don't believe the other 2 gentlemen that I've spoken of can say. John Jones did heavily clear out the heavyweight division. Like, cleared it out, and he's cleared it out for multiple fight generations. George St. Pierre did kind of the same. And so it's really hard for me to say. If I had to choose, I might still say John Jones is the GOAT. But if somebody were to say Amanda Nunes is the GOAT, I would have a hard time arguing that. And so comment down below, people, what you think. Who do you think is the GOAT? And I think it's a closer race than a lot of people might say. Is it John Jones? Is it Amanda Nunes? George St. Pierre? Anderson Silva? Demetrius Johnson? Comment down below your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, people. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.